Hey friends, it's Jessica Utz with Keller Williams Real Estate. I'm excited today because we have our arborist, our specialist, Jeff. I'm going to go ahead and let you say your last name because it's like Utz. If you see it, you can't say it. So
no problem. I learn how to say my name every day. I pronounce it Swistowicz, but like I say, I try. It's always different. That's why most people just know me as Swiss, or Jeff Swiss, or however you like it. I don't force anybody to try to spell that all out, so I've always kept it nice and short.
Good, awesome. Well, I call him Jeff, so that's a good thing about it.
Yeah, it works as well too.
So very good. We are going to I'm going to ask him a few questions, and then we're going to go look around. We're actually at my mom's house today, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah. All sorts of good things to look at, so hopefully we can get you some good information, some things that you can do as a homeowner yourself, and then other things that you can call someone like myself, or other times that we need to bring in some of our bigger equipment and guys climbing the trees.
Very good. So I'm going to just start out with the first question is, what's your specialty, your expertise, your go-to when you're working in the field? Absolutely.
So when I first got into the tree business, I had a gentleman that was really teaching me, and he showed me the amazingness of the root structure of trees. And there's a little bit of a cliche to it. It's always the root of the problem. And I will tell you, as far as this arborist is concerned, no matter what is going on with a tree, a lot of times we can start with what had potentially been some kind of root damage or any kind of, it's always something with the roots, and it's a, it's always a really good place to start. And I just find it really interesting, the root system themselves.
That's cool. That's the part that's like underground and you take it for granted, right? You
Quite
just
literally,
don't even,
yeah.
You don't see it. You don't know it's there, you don't understand the value of it.
And we actually have a really cool tool in the arboriculture world that we call it air spade, and it's a big air compressor and with a cool little wand, and what we can do is we can blow away some of the dirt from around the root system without causing any damage to the roots themselves, because there's a bunch of little fiber roots on it. And then if there is any kind of obstruction or any kind of damage, we can quite literally get in there and kind of do a little bit of surgery, see what's going on. So that's really fascinating. That's my favorite part. That's what I like.
That's cool. I would have never thought
it's
to
fun.
do that. You guys did stuff like that.
See,
very
always
neat.
Here to tell you about new things.
Very cool. Thank you. So what areas do you service? What are your favorite places to be?
In terms of in the area of the valley?
Yeah.
Well, we certainly like Bountiful. It's always a little, anywhere that there is a nice diversity of trees, and we get to see some things that are a little bit different. Kind of the taller trees are always fun. Anywhere that basically people have taken the time to really build an arborscape is something that always gets tree guys excited. We see spruces and aspens and maples and your standard street trees all the time. So anytime that we can kind of see something new and different is always fun. So really throughout the valley, there's always, I find something always super interesting in the back of somebody's yard, and there's always some kind of fun story about it, about how, I planted this 20 years ago and these types of things. So yeah, I don't think there's really a specific place. It's really about the individual properties.
Okay. So you're looking at the different species and learning new things, but also caring for whatever plants.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, we're on the Wasatch Front, so you would want to stay in the Wasatch Front.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we are all through the Wasatch Front. We also do service Summit and Wasatch County.
Okay.
We've got a pretty broad reach, really. So anywhere that you need us. I'm a part of Savatree, but there are many other tree industries companies in the area. The real key thing is to just make sure that you do verify that they are a ISA certified arborist. And that'll be one kind of distinction, is that the term arborist can kind of mean somebody who works on trees, but someone who has been certified through the International Society of Arboriculture, they're the ones that we kind of have a certain amount of self-regulating, and we all kind of work together as friends to make sure that everything is as best as it can be as stewards of the trees.
That's cool. I can relate to that, because with real estate, it's the same thing. We
Sure.
don't necessarily have to be a part of a board, but we certainly can come together as part of a board and live to a certain standard.
Exactly.
Which it sounds like that's what I'm hearing you say, that you guys set a standard and you all live to that standard.
It really is, and then that way we, as a industry and everybody working together, we can all kind of, to some degree, have the standard. We're all saying the same things. People aren't getting conflicting information. Now, of course, people are going to look at things different, but we hope
Right.
to all have at least the same general approach.
Right, right. Very good. And learning the new information. I'm sure that you guys are still learning new things all the time.
I learn something new every day. Every day I walk onto a piece of property and I'm like, oh great, well I get to learn something, I get to go do something, because I don't know exactly what this is always. There's a lot of things that I can point from like long distances and be like, that's that and that's that. But then every time it seems like I don't know what that is. I get to dig in and either call somebody or look on the internet, and yeah, it's fun.
Go figure it out. Very
Exactly.
cool. Very cool. So here we are back. We're moved to the trees. We're standing so close to each other. I'm so excited with the COVID vaccinations. We get to see each other's smiles. We get to stand next to each other and shake hands. So we're excited for that. Anyway, so now we're at the trees.
Yep.
Go ahead. You were telling me some interesting things about what is it called? The basal root? The basal?
So the technical term is the basal root flare, or basically the root crown, or the root flare is probably a good way to know it. And so to kind of give an example here of when I'm called out to property, there's always concerns about what might be going on with the tree. And one of the very first things that I always come to look at is, no matter what tree it is, so this is a Colorado blue spruce that we're looking at. We can look at the needles a little bit later. No matter what tree it is that I'm looking at, I always come around, and if you can kind of see like right here where that trunk flares out to the root. And I have to stress this is probably the most important thing that I could ever tell anybody. This section right here is literally the throat of the tree. Probably the most important part of any tree. When I was talking about the roots and such earlier, is that if there's any kind of obstruction or any kind of damage around this flare, that is one of the main first causes that a tree would be in decline. So we start here, kind of look around, and this is a great one. This is a very mature tree. It's been here for a long time. One of the other things is I can see is like where this little depression is, where the trunk's not completely around all the way, is that there's probably some type of obstruction right here.
Oh.
Whether or not it's a root that is kind of encircled or entangled something. And that doesn't always mean that we have to address it. It's all just a matter of like putting these puzzle pieces together and kind of start to see it. I was talking about being able to do some excavation with the roots. If we were to follow this up and we were to see like a bunch of concerns or some discoloration of the trunk or anything right here, that's when we'd go right down and say, okay, we need to do a little bit of further investigation right here and potentially remove that obstruction.
Okay.
So again, to reiterate, as a homeowner, the number one thing that you can always do for any tree, it doesn't matter what it is a lot of times you'll get a lot of bark mulch that will kind of get piled up over the years, because you know, people like to have that new bark mulch every year for the new color. But what can happen is that can really start to stack up, and it does two things. Is one, that pressure literally starts to kind of choke it up so it's not able to pull up as much water. And then also, if you've got this much material, any kind of water, rain, anything has to get through all of that material in order to get to the root zone.
Okay.
So although the bark mulch is really good and it's really helpful, but we really only want it like an inch or so deep. That way it can hold the moisture without causing any kind of impact. Another thing that I see a lot is that if it's a tree that's been recently planted within the last year or two, it's always important to come and make sure that that twine from the nursery has been removed. I can't tell you how many times I've come onto property and seen a tree that's just sick and nobody knows what's going on, and I come down here and I can grab my little pocket knife and there'll be literally a piece of twine that has been choking the thing out for years and years and years.
Tied onto it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Wow.
So that is bar none. If you're looking to do the best thing you can for your trees, open up that collar, make sure that you can see it flare away. If there is any kind of obstruction, that's where you might have to give an arborist a call or somebody and kind of get a little further information on it or see what can be done. And of course, everything can be searched on the internet. The basal root flare is the technical term.
And that's this part where it widens up and starts turning into the root system right here.
You can see where, it creates those roots right there.
Okay.
And so that part right there, right where it flares out at the bottom, that's the most important, and it's important to keep that soil right there. And we can take a look at one kind of in the area here. But something that's interesting right here with this pine is, so now, and hopefully you can kind of see it through the camera, the magic of TV, we see that this tree goes straight down into the dirt. And we can kind of look at the landscape here and we can see that there's a little bit of additional soil here. Now, this doesn't mean that it's going to kill a tree or it's going to be the end all and be all. Again, this is a very mature tree. I was talking to you earlier. It's been here for a long time. This soil has been here for a long time. So the tree has kind of survived it. But in its current condition, with this soil pressed up against it, it is slightly more prone to a beetle infestation or anything else, because it's just not as ideal as it could be. So, and I caution is that's one of these things, is we put all these pieces together and we kind of look at it as a whole and we start to develop the story, because it's not just one pest. It's a collection of things that have all come together. And in this landscape with the condition of the tree, I wouldn't worry about it, but it would be something that I would point out and say, hey, this might be something that if you're going to do some reconstruction of the landscape, it might be important to look at. But then we have to take everything into consideration. We have a good mature root right here. So one of my favorite things about the arboriculture world is sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. Quite literally. We just kind of give it a name and love it and pay attention to it over the years and see if we see anything different. And with that, we can kind of take a step back and look a little bit more at the canopy. Okay.
And this, just so that I know, this one is maybe like a tree drinking through a straw with a little bit of a pinch in it. So if I need water to make sure my body's working well, the tree needs water, well, it's just having to work a little bit harder.
That's it.
Okay.
That's the whole, you nailed it way better than I did in 10 minutes of explaining it.
Well, no, you explained it so I could understand.
No, it's
That's
great.
Good.
Yeah. Pass it on to everybody. Please. Most important thing to think about and look at. Again, one of the main things that you want to keep an eye out for and look for if you're either getting ready to sell your property or coming onto a new property, I think that's also important, is really look to those very tops and those very tips. If there's any kind of discoloration or any kind of like weird looking branches that don't quite look right, that's the time to call in somebody and say, okay, something's going on. If it's kind of sparse in the middle and it's just not as much as you think it might be, but it's focused on the middle, that usually is just kind of a condition of how it's grown over the years. But anything out on those outer tips is usually something that needs to be addressed. and usually the sooner before the later, because once a pest gets in, it can be a pretty rapid decline. And a lot of times by the time you see enough discoloration or anything like that, it can almost be too late. So it's important to take a picture, take a mental picture, and just kind of see if you see any changes. The other thing to think about is when everybody loves trees and they want to make sure that we've got them all nice together, but when they grow too close together over a period of time, that's where you can get where there's kind of that thinner canopy in the middle. And I'll tell you, and I want you to, there's not much we can do about it. It's something that when they're younger and they're starting to kind of reach out into each other, that's when it is that we want to do a little bit of either pruning or selective clearing. Whether or not that's something that is good for curb appeal, it's something, again, talk to an arborist. They can kind of walk you through a little bit of what your options can be. Trees will grow a lot when they have a lot of room to grow, but if they're pushing onto each other, they're going to kind of always be in that stunted condition a little bit. These again looking really good. If you see any concerns, call an arborist.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very welcome.
We're so glad I learned something new. The basil root base.
Flare.
Flare.
Yep.
Basil root flare. So that's exciting. Learned something new.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it.
And again, you can call anyone. All arborists do work together, so don't feel like you have to call me, but we will provide my information. But
Yep.
anyone who's certified will be able to give you the same amount of information, if not more.
We're in good shape. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.